The crack of palm against flesh cut through the silence like thunder. Maya's hand burned, her chest heaving as she stared at the red mark blooming across Yuna's porcelain cheek. The Louis Vuitton clutch slipped from Yuna's manicured fingers, scattering lipsticks and credit cards across the gleaming floor. Time seemed to stop. The crystal chandelier above cast fractured light across the frozen scene. Then Yuna's eyes went from shocked to murderous. "You just hit me?" Her voice came out strangled, disbelieving. "Do you have any concept of what you've done? Who I am? What I can do to you?" Maya's voice didn't waver. "I know exactly what I've done. And I'd do it again without hesitation. Welcome back, friends. This is Prince of Afro-Korean stories, where passion, danger, and impossible romance intersect. Please keep sharing your ideas for future episodes. And kindly like, share, and subscribe, and activate notifications so you never miss our latest content. Then drop a comment telling me your location, Seoul, Chicago, somewhere between. I want to know who's bold enough to hear what really happened. The sound of footsteps, measured and deliberate, echoed from the marble staircase. Jill materialized at the top of the steps, his black Armani suit sharp enough to cut glass, his face an unreadable mask. Those dark eyes swept over the scene, cataloging everything in seconds, his girlfriend clutching her face, the expensive bag spilling its guts on his floor, and Maya with her hands still balled into fists. "Someone," he said, his voice deadly quiet in the way that made grown men nervous, "is going to explain what just happened in my home." But to understand how we arrived at this moment, how a housemaid from Lagos found herself striking the girlfriend of Seoul's most feared man, we need to rewind. Back to 6 hours earlier, when Maya walked through those gates thinking this was just another paycheck. The morning started with Maya standing outside the compound in Gangnam, gripping her worn duffel bag like a lifeline. 3 years she'd been in Korea. 3 years of wealthy homes and demanding employers. But this estate was different. The gates alone probably cost more than she'd make in 5 years. The September breeze carried that specific scent of old money and new power. A stern woman in a crisp uniform appeared. "The agency sent you?" "Maya Okonkwo?" "Yes, ma'am." The woman's assessment was thorough and cold. "I'm Mrs. Kong, head of staff. The agency mentioned you've worked for prominent families." 3 years. 2 families in Gangnam, 1 in Itaewon. Mrs. Kang's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "Mr. Park requires absolute discretion. What you see stays here. What you hear stays here. What you know stays here. Understood?" Maya nodded. Everyone knew about Joe Park. The papers called him an entrepreneur, a business prodigy who'd inherited his father's empire at 25 and multiplied it tenfold. The streets whispered other names, darker names. The interior matched Maya's expectations perfectly. Marble everywhere, abstract art worth small fortunes, windows offering views of gardens that belonged in magazines. What caught her off guard was the elderly woman in the sunroom, hands folded peacefully, watching koi swim in lazy circles. "Mr. Park's mother," Mrs. Kong murmured. "Mrs. Park. In this house, she's priority 1. Whatever she needs, whenever she asks, everything else waits." "Clear?" The old woman turned, and Maya's breath caught. Mrs. Park's face was weathered with time, but her eyes held genuine warmth, something that felt impossible in a mansion this cold. "You must be Maya," she said in careful English, her smile reaching her eyes. "Please, sit with me." That first morning, Maya learned the house rhythms. Mrs. Park wasn't the ice queen she'd anticipated. The woman insisted on helping with laundry, refused being treated like porcelain, and spoke to the staff like actual humans. She told stories about Busan, about falling in love at a church gathering, about watching her gentle boy transform into something harder after his father's death. He had no choice, Mrs. Park said softly, folding linens with practiced hands. When his father passed, they circled like sharks. He had to become someone they couldn't devour. You must be proud, Maya offered. Mrs. Park's smile turned melancholy. I'm proud of who he could have been. I love who he is. But pride? That's more complicated. They worked in comfortable quiet, and Maya felt herself relaxing. Maybe this job would work. Mrs. Park was kind, the money was good, and if she kept invisible and silent, everything would be manageable. Then the storm named Yuna arrived. Maya heard her before seeing her. The roar of an engine that cost more than houses. A car door slamming with force. The aggressive staccato of stilettos on stone. Maya looked up from polishing the dining table as the entrance burst open. Yuna swept in like she owned the oxygen itself. Designer everything. Hair styled to mathematical precision. Face expertly painted. Beautiful in that manufactured, expensive way Seoul perfected. She looked through Maya like she was furniture. Where's Joe? Not a greeting. A demand. Mrs. Kong materialized from nowhere. Mr. Park is in meetings, Miss Kim. He'll return this evening. Yuna's disgust was palpable. Of course. Always working. Never time for me. Her eyes finally acknowledged Maya's existence. Who's this? The new maid, Miss Kim. Maya. Wonderful. Another one. She waved dismissively. Coffee. Iced Americano. No sugar. Extra shot. Now. Maya glanced at Mrs. Kong, who gave a slight nod. Right away. In the kitchen, Mrs. Kang's warning was urgent. Miss Kim is particular. Don't take her behavior personally. Mr. Park tolerates her because, well, it's not our business. Just work and stay invisible. Maya prepared the coffee precisely, though irritation simmered beneath her calm. She'd dealt with entitled people before. This was nothing new. Back in the living room, Yuna was sprawled on white leather, phone glued to her face. Finally. She sipped without looking up, then grimaced. This is wrong. Did you even add the extra shot? Yes, Miss Kim. Exactly as requested. It tastes terrible. Make another. Maya's jaw clenched, but she nodded. Of course. As she turned, Mrs. Park appeared, moving carefully with her cane. Yuna, dear, would you join me for lunch? I made kimchi jjigae, the way you like. Yuna didn't even glance up. I don't eat that anymore. Too much sodium. Old people food. The words landed like slaps. Maya watched Mrs. Park's face, saw the hurt flash before the old woman hid it behind a smile. Of course, dear. You young people must watch your health. Whatever. Yuna's thumbs flew across her screen. Can someone fix this temperature? It's unbearable. Maya made the second coffee, identical to the first. Yuna sipped, shrugged, returned to her phone. Back in the kitchen, Mrs. Park stirred the stew she'd made with such care. She's just busy, Mrs. Park said quietly, to no one in particular. Young people today are always busy. Maya wanted to scream that being busy wasn't permission for cruelty. But she swallowed the words. Not her place. Not her fight. She'd learned that lesson the hard way. The afternoon crawled by like torture. Yuna issued commands without please or thank you, without even acknowledging the people serving her. Water. Snacks. Adjust the blinds. Each order delivered like she was training a dog. Maya felt her anger building with each dismissive word, but kept her expression neutral, her voice professional. Around 4, Mrs. Park returned with a plate of fresh-cut melon. Yuna, I thought you might enjoy some fruit. The melon is particularly sweet this season. Yuna finally looked up, annoyed. I told you I'm watching what I eat. Fruit has sugar. Just a small piece. I picked the ripest one at the market this morning. Are you deaf? Yuna's voice sharpened. I said no. God, you're so pushy. This is why Gio avoids coming home. Maya's hands froze mid-rinse. She turned to see Mrs. Park standing there, the plate trembling in her aged hands. The old woman's face had gone quiet and still. I apologize, Mrs. Park whispered. I didn't mean to bother you. Well, you did. You always do. Yuna stood, stretching. I'm taking a nap in Joe's room. Don't disturb me. She brushed past Mrs. Park without a second glance, leaving the old woman holding her carefully prepared fruit. Maya watched as Mrs. Park's shoulders sagged, as she shuffled to the kitchen and quietly scraped the melon into the trash. Mrs. Park, Maya started. It's fine, child. She's young. Stressed. I remember being young. But her voice cracked, and Maya saw her wipe quickly at her eyes. The anger that had been simmering all afternoon crystallized into something cold and hard. Maya had been raised to respect elders, to honor those who came before. Watching this kind, gentle woman treated like an inconvenience in her own home made Maya's blood sing with rage. But she stayed quiet. She kept working. She needed this job. Starting a war with the boss's girlfriend on day one would be career suicide. Sunset brought Geo Park home. Maya heard the security detail first, the low voices and electronic beeps. Then he entered, flanked by 2 men in dark suits who peeled off to guard the entrance. Geo Park defied Maya's expectations. She'd pictured someone older, harder, scarred by the life people whispered about. Instead, he looked like he'd stepped from a business magazine. Tall, lean, perfectly tailored suit, handsome in that sharp, angular way. Only his eyes betrayed him. They were calculating, cold, missing nothing. His gaze swept the foyer, landed on Maya. You're new. A statement, not a question. Yes, sir. Maya Okonkwo. Started this morning. He studied her a moment longer, nodded once, turned toward the stairs. Where's my mother? The sunroom, sir. He changed direction without another word, his steps silent on marble. 20 minutes later, raised voices echoed from upstairs. Maya was folding linens when Yuna's voice cut through the house like a blade. I don't care what she wants, Joe. I'm exhausted by her constant hovering, her constant feeding attempts, her acting like she owns this place. She does own this place. Joe's voice, quieter but clear. Father left it to her. Then maybe it's time for somewhere else. A facility with professionals. She's getting old, Joe. She forgets things. Last week she called me by your aunt's name. That's not happening. Why? Because you feel guilty? Because keeping her in this giant house makes up for never being around? Wake up, Joe. She'd be better with professionals, and we'd finally have privacy. A door slammed, ending the argument. Maya stood frozen, gripping the linens until her knuckles went white. Put her somewhere else. Mrs. Park, who loved this house, who tended the gardens herself, who still set her husband's place on his birthday. The audacity made Maya's vision blur. Dinner that evening was tense. Jill at the head of the table, Mrs. Park to his right, Yuna to his left. Maya and Mrs. Kong served in silence. Bulgogi, japchae, banchan Mrs. Park had prepared that afternoon. "This looks wonderful, Mother," Jill said, and Mrs. Park glowed. "I made your favorite. The japchae from your grandmother's recipe." Yuna pushed food around her plate. "Is any of this MSG free? My nutritionist says it destroys your skin." "Everything is homemade," Mrs. Park said gently. "No MSG. Just natural ingredients." "Right." Yuna's tone screamed disbelief. She pulled out her phone. "Yuna." Warning in Jo's voice. "Put it away." She sighed dramatically but complied, setting it face down. "Fine. But I can't stay long. I have plans. Mina's birthday party in Itaewon. I need you here tonight. I have people coming. Then I'll be back before they arrive." Yuna stood, meal barely touched. "I'll get ready now." She left without excusing herself, without thanking Mrs. Park. Jill watched her go, jaw tight, but said nothing. He turned to his mother instead, his expression softening fractionally. "It's delicious, Mother." "Thank you." Mrs. Park beamed, reaching over to pat his hand. "You work too hard, my son. You need to eat more. Rest more." "I'm fine." "You're not fine. You look exhausted. When did you last sleep properly?" "Mother." "And this one you're with?" Mrs. Park's voice turned urgent. "She's not right for you, Joe. She doesn't see you. She doesn't see any of us." Joe's face went carefully blank. "That's not your concern. You're my son. Everything about you is my concern." Mrs. Park's eyes filled with tears. "Your father would." "Don't." The word came sharp, cutting. "Don't talk about what father would want. He's not here." The silence was suffocating. Mrs. Park withdrew her hand, her face crumpling before she forced a smile. "You're right. I'm sorry. I overstepped." Maya, standing in the corner with a water pitcher, wanted to scream. Wanted to grab Gio and shake him. His mother was trying to protect him, trying to show him the truth, and he dismissed her like she was nobody. After dinner, things accelerated. Yuna emerged in a dress that probably cost more than Maya's rent, reapplying lipstick in the hallway mirror. Mrs. Park appeared, moving slowly with her cane. "Yuna, dear, before you leave, I wanted to speak with you." Yuna didn't turn. "I'm kind of in a rush, Mrs. Park. It'll only take a moment." The old woman's voice was hesitant, nervous. I wanted to say, I know I can be overwhelming sometimes. If I've been overbearing, I apologize. I just want you and Joe to be happy and..." "Seriously?" Yuna did turn then, one eyebrow raised. "You're apologizing to me?" "I just thought." "You thought what?" "That saying sorry would make me suddenly enjoy your constant interference? Your judgment every time I walk through the door?" Yuna's volume increased with each word. "You want the truth, Mrs. Park? You make this house unbearable. Always hovering, always watching, always trying to poison Joe against me with your traditional values and your martyrdom routine." Mrs. Park's face had gone white. "I would never." "Save it." Yuna grabbed her purse. "I don't have time for this. Some of us have actual lives outside this mausoleum. She spun and nearly collided with Maya, frozen in the doorway. Their eyes met. Maya saw guilt flash across Yuna's face, quickly buried under irritation. "Move," Yuna snapped, pushing past. Maya didn't move. She stood watching Mrs. Park, watching the old woman's hands shake as she clutched her cane, watching tears finally spill over and track down weathered cheeks. "Mrs. Park," Maya whispered, moving to her side. "Don't listen to her. She's cruel and selfish and..." "She's right, though," Mrs. Park said softly. "I do hover. I do judge. I just want my son with someone who loves him. Someone who sees how good he is underneath everything." "Is that so wrong?" Maya wanted to say no, it wasn't wrong at all. But the words stuck because Mrs. Park was crying now. Really crying. Her whole body shaking. Mrs. Kong appeared and gently guided Mrs. Park toward her room. "Come on. Let's get you some tea. Maya, finish in the kitchen." Maya nodded and returned to her work, but her hands shook with rage. The absolute nerve of that woman to speak to Mrs. Park like that, to make her feel small in her own home. "You still with me?" Comment below if you're feeling what I'm feeling right now, because this story is about to go somewhere none of us expected. An hour later, Maya was still seething as she wiped down counters. She heard the front door, heard Yuna's voice, heard the car pull away. Then she heard Mrs. Park cry out. The sound was sharp, pained, and Maya was moving before thinking, her feet carrying her toward the sunroom. Mrs. Park was on the floor, her cane a few feet away, trying to push herself up. "I'm fine. Just lost my balance." "Don't move." Maya dropped to her knees. "Let me help." "Are you hurt?" "Just my pride." Mrs. Park tried to laugh, but it came out as a sob. "I can't even walk in my own house without falling. Maybe Yuna's right. Maybe I should go somewhere with nurses watching me constantly." "Don't say that," Maya said fiercely, helping Mrs. Park into a chair. "Don't let that woman make you doubt yourself. You're not a burden. This is your home." Mrs. Park looked at Maya with red-rimmed eyes. "You're kind to say so. But kindness doesn't change reality. I'm old. I'm in the way. My son is building a life, and I'm just here, a reminder of the past he's trying to forget." "That's not true. Isn't it?" Mrs. Park's smile was unbearably sad. "He used to tell me everything. When he was young, he'd come home from school and talk for hours. His friends, his dreams, his fears. Now he barely looks at me. Because when he does, he sees his father. He sees everything he's lost." Maya didn't know what to say. She helped Mrs. Park to her room, made sure she was settled with water and medication, then retreated to the kitchen where Mrs. Kong was waiting. "Don't get involved," Mrs. Kong said quietly. "I see it in your face. What you're thinking. Don't. Someone needs to stand up to her. Not you. Not if you want to keep this job." Mrs. Kang's expression was sympathetic but firm. "I've seen it before. New staff comes in, sees how Miss Kim treats Mrs. Park, gets righteous. They speak up. They interfere. Then they're gone. Mr. Park doesn't tolerate drama. So we just let her be cruel. We do our jobs. We keep our heads down. That's how you survive here." Maya wanted to argue, but she knew Mrs. Kong was right. So she finished her shift, gathered her things, and left for her small Hongdae apartment, her mind churning with anger and helplessness. If you're hooked on this story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because trust me, you'll want to see what happens next. The next morning, Maya arrived with dread sitting heavy in her stomach. She'd barely slept, kept awake by images of Mrs. Park crying, by Yuna's cruel words, by her own powerlessness. But she needed this job. She couldn't afford to lose it over someone else's drama. Mrs. Kong met her at the door, face grim. Mrs. Park didn't sleep well. Check on her after breakfast prep. She likes you. Maya nodded and got to work. The kitchen was peaceful in early morning light, and she fell into the rhythm of chopping vegetables for soup Mrs. Park had requested. She was so focused she didn't hear Gio enter until he spoke. You're Maya. She jumped, nearly dropping the knife. Gio stood in the doorway in a charcoal suit, his expression unreadable. Up close, Maya could see dark circles under his eyes, tension in his jaw. Yes, sir. Can I get you something? My mother spoke highly of you last night. He moved further in, pouring himself coffee. She said you were kind to her. Maya wasn't sure how to respond, so she just nodded and returned to chopping. She also told me what Yuna said to her. Maya's knife stilled. She looked up to find Gio watching her with those cold, assessing eyes. I see. He took a sip of coffee. What do you think of my girlfriend? The question was a trap. Maya knew it instantly. Say the wrong thing and she'd be unemployed by lunch. But something in Gio's expression, some flicker of genuine curiosity, made her take the chance. I think, Maya said carefully, choosing each word like stepping stones across a river, that your mother deserves respect in her own home. I think kindness costs nothing. And I think sometimes people show us who they are, and we should believe them. Gio's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. My mother also said I should be grateful to have someone who cares enough to tell me hard truths. Your mother is wise. She is. He set down his coffee. She's also lonely and sad, and I don't know how to fix that. The admission hung between them. Maya saw, for just a moment, not the cold mafia boss, but a son who loved his mother and didn't know how to protect her from his own choices. Maybe, Maya suggested quietly, start by listening to her. Really listening. Gio studied her for a long moment, then nodded once and left without another word. Maya returned to her chopping, heart racing. She'd just given relationship advice to one of Seoul's most dangerous men. Either that was the bravest or stupidest thing she'd ever done. The morning passed without incident. Mrs. Park seemed brighter when Maya brought her breakfast, insisted on helping fold laundry despite Maya's protests. Then, just before noon, Yuna's car roared up the driveway. She swept into the house like she owned it, designer sunglasses on, a Chanel shopping bag dangling from one wrist. Maya was in the foyer arranging flowers when Yuna breezed past without acknowledgement. Where's Joe? Yuna demanded of Mrs. Kong. In his study. He asked not to be disturbed. I'm not a disturbance. I'm his girlfriend. Yuna headed for the stairs, then paused. Oh, and tell whoever cooks I want lunch in an hour. Something light. Salad, no dressing. Mrs. Park is the one who cooks, Mrs. Kong said carefully. And she's resting. Yuna's expression soured. Of course she is. Fine. Order something. I don't care. She disappeared upstairs, and Maya exchanged a look with Mrs. Kong. It got worse when Mrs. Park emerged an hour later, having heard Yuna was home. The old woman had changed into a nice hanbok, had done her hair, clearly making an effort. She'd also prepared a tray of cookies, traditional yagwa that she must have been up making before dawn. I thought we could have tea, Mrs. Park said hopefully when she found Yuna in the living room. I made your favorite cookies. Do you remember? You used to love these when you first started dating Joe. Yuna looked up from her phone with barely concealed annoyance. I told you I don't eat sweets anymore. Just one. I made them especially. Mrs. Park, seriously. Yuna's voice had an edge. I said no. How many times do I have to tell you things before you get it through your head? Mrs. Park's hands trembled on the tray. I just thought I was trying to be nice. You were trying to guilt-trip me. Like you always do. Yuna stood, tossing her phone on the couch. This is exactly what I'm talking about, Joe. Her raised voice brought Joe from his study. He appeared in the doorway, expression thunderous. What's going on? Your mother is harassing me again, Yuna said, gesturing at Mrs. Park. She won't take no for an answer. She keeps pushing food on me, keeps trying to have these little bonding moments I don't want. It's suffocating. Joe's gaze moved to his mother, standing there with her tray of cookies, her face crumpling. Mother, maybe Yuna's right. Maybe you should give her some space. The words landed like physical blows. Maya, standing in the hallway within earshot, saw Mrs. Park's face go white, saw hope drain from her eyes. Yes, of course. I'm sorry. Mrs. Park's voice was barely a whisper. She turned to leave, the tray still in her shaking hands. That's when Yuna made her fatal mistake. Finally, she muttered, just loud enough for everyone to hear. Maybe now we can have some peace. God knows she's been nothing but a burden since I started coming here. Old, clingy, pathetic. What did you just say? Maya's voice cut through the room like a blade. Everyone turned. Maya stood in the hallway doorway, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. She'd heard enough. She'd seen enough. Something in her had snapped. Excuse me? Yuna's eyebrows shot up. Did the help just interrupt me? I asked what you just said. Maya took a step forward. About Mrs. Park. Maya. Mrs. Kong appeared behind her, voice urgent. Don't. But Maya was beyond listening. She moved into the living room, her eyes locked on Yuna. You called her pathetic. A burden. This woman who has shown you nothing but kindness. Who cooks for you. Who tries so hard to make you feel welcome in her home. Her home? Yuna laughed, sharp and cruel. This is Joe's home. She just lives here on charity. This house belonged to her husband, Maya said, her voice rising. She raised her son here. She's earned every inch of it. You're the charity case, a pretty face who contributes nothing except cruelty and disrespect. How dare you? Yuna hissed, taking a step toward Maya. Do you know who you're talking to? I could have you fired with one phone call. Deported even. Who do you think you are? I'm someone who knows how to treat people with basic human decency, Maya shot back. Which is apparently more than you can manage. Maya, that's enough. Joe's voice was cold. You're out of line. Am I? Maya turned to face him. Or am I the only one in this house willing to say what everyone's thinking? Your mother is a saint for putting up with this. She never finished the sentence because that's when Mrs. Park, who'd been standing frozen near the door, suddenly swayed. The tray slipped from her hands, cookies scattering. She grabbed for her cane and missed, stumbling backward. Maya was moving before anyone else could react, catching Mrs. Park before she hit the ground. The old woman's face was gray, her breathing shallow. Call an ambulance, Maya shouted. Now. Joe was already on his phone, barking orders. Mrs. Kong rushed to Maya's side with cushions. And Yuna stood there, her face a mask of shock and something that might have been fear. If this hooked you already, don't forget to subscribe, like, and drop a comment because what happens next will absolutely shatter your expectations. The paramedics arrived within minutes, benefits of living in Gangnam and having the park name. They loaded Mrs. Park onto a stretcher, Jill climbing into the ambulance with them. He looked back once at Maya, his expression unreadable, before the doors closed and they sped away. The house fell into stunned silence. Mrs. Kong began picking up scattered cookies, her movements mechanical. Yuna finally seemed to realize the gravity of what had just happened. She's fine, right? Yuna's voice was small. She just fainted. Old people do that. Maya rounded on her. She fainted because you've been tormenting her for months. Because you made her feel unwelcome and unwanted in her own home. Because you're selfish and cruel and you don't deserve. Shut up. Yuna's face flushed red. You don't know anything about me. About my relationship with Joe. About any of this. You're just some random maid who's been here for 5 minutes. I know enough, Maya said coldly. I know that woman is in an ambulance right now because of you. The words hung between them like a verdict. Yuna's face crumpled, and for just a moment, Maya saw something that might have been genuine remorse. But it vanished quickly, replaced by defensiveness and anger. Get out, Yuna said. You're fired. You can't fire me. This isn't your house. It will be. Yuna shot back. When Joe and I get married, this will all be mine. And the first thing I'm doing is getting rid of you and putting that old woman in a home where she belongs. The words were like gasoline on Maya's already burning rage. Before she could think, before she could stop herself, before she could remember all the reasons this was a terrible idea, Maya was moving. Her hand connected with Yuna's cheek in a slap that echoed through the mansion like a gunshot. Which brings us back to where we started. To that frozen moment. To Yuna's shocked face and Maya's trembling hand and the sound of Joe's expensive shoes on the marble stairs. What? Joe said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of someone who didn't need to shout to be terrifying, is happening in my house. Maya turned to face him, her chin raised. There was no point in denying it, no point in making excuses. She'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. I slapped her, Maya said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline singing through her veins. She was saying terrible things about your mother. About putting her in a home. And I couldn't listen to it anymore. She assaulted me, Yuna found her voice, her hand still pressed to her reddening cheek. In front of witnesses. I want her arrested. I want her. You want what? Joe's voice cut through Yuna's tirade like ice. He descended the rest of the stairs slowly, his eyes never leaving Maya's face. You want the woman arrested for defending my mother? Yuna blinked. What? You heard me. Joe finally looked at his girlfriend, and his expression was arctic. Do you think I don't know what's been happening? Do you think the staff doesn't tell me everything? I know what you said to my mother yesterday. I know about every dismissive comment, every cruel remark, every time you've made her feel small. Joe, that's not, I didn't mean. You told her she should be put in a facility. His voice was soft, deadly. You told her she was pathetic. Yuna's face drained of color. I was upset. I didn't mean it literally. Didn't you? Joe moved closer, and Maya saw Yuna take an involuntary step back. Because from where I'm standing, you meant every word. You've been trying to push her out since the beginning. Make her feel unwelcome so she'd leave on her own. That's not true. Don't lie to me, Yuna. His voice hardened. I've built my entire life on being able to read people. On knowing when I'm being played. And you? He laughed, harsh and bitter. You've been playing me from day one. The room felt too small suddenly, the air too thick. Maya stood frozen, watching this confrontation unfold, not sure if she should leave or stay. Joe, please. Yuna's voice cracked. I love you. Everything I've done has been for us. For our future together. No. Joe's voice was flat. Everything you've done has been for yourself. For the lifestyle. The status. The money. You never loved me. You loved what I could give you. That's not fair. Life isn't fair. He pulled out his phone, sent a text. My driver will take you home. Pack your things. I don't want to see you here again. Yuna's face cycled through shock, anger, and finally desperate calculation. You're going to regret this. You're throwing away our relationship because some maid got in your head. Because I wasn't nice enough to your mother. I'm ending this, Joe said, his expression carved from stone, because you showed me exactly who you are. And I choose to believe you. The driver appeared at the door. Yuna looked between Joe and Maya, her eyes filling with tears that might or might not have been genuine. Fine. But don't come crying to me when you realize what you've lost. I won't, Joe said simply. Yuna grabbed her designer bag and stalked out, her heels clicking furiously on marble. The door slammed behind her, and then there was silence. Maya waited for Joe to turn his anger on her, to fire her for overstepping, for hitting his girlfriend even if he'd just broken up with her. Instead, he just looked tired. My mother's fine, he said quietly. They're keeping her overnight for observation, but it was just stress and exhaustion. She'll be home tomorrow. I'm glad, Maya said. I'm sorry for. Don't. He held up a hand. Don't apologize for defending her. I should have done it myself months ago. I knew how Yuna treated her. I didn't want to see it. Didn't want to admit I'd chosen wrong. Then why didn't you end it sooner? Joe was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was raw. Because it was easier to have someone who didn't ask questions about my work. Someone who didn't care about the parts of my life that are dark. My mother looks at me and sees all the ways I've failed to be the man my father was. Yuna looked at me and didn't care who I was as long as the money kept coming. Your mother doesn't think you failed, Maya said softly. She's proud of you. She just misses you. I know. He rubbed his face with both hands. I know that. And yet I keep choosing everything else over her. The business. The reputation. Even Yuna. Because being the man my mother wants me to be feels impossible. So I stopped trying. The admission hung in the air between them. Maya saw in that moment not the cold mafia boss, but the boy Mrs. Park had described. The one who used to talk about his dreams before the world forced him to become something harder. It's not too late, Maya ventured. To try again. Joe looked at her, really looked at her for the first time. You're either very brave or very stupid, you know that? Slapping my girlfriend in my house. Ex-girlfriend, Maya corrected, then immediately wondered if she'd gone too far. But Joe laughed. A real laugh that transformed his face. Ex-girlfriend, he agreed. Mrs. Kong was right about you. She said you had fire. Said you reminded her of my mother when she was young. Your mother was a troublemaker? According to my father's stories, she once chased a man out of her village with a broom because he disrespected her mother. Jo's smile was genuine now. Sounds familiar. Maya felt her own lips twitch. I didn't have a broom handy. Your hands worked fine. He sobered. I should fire you, you know. For assaulting someone in my home. That's the sensible thing to do. Maya's heart sank. I understand. But I'm not going to. Jo straightened, his business persona sliding back into place. Because my mother needs someone around who actually gives a damn about her. Someone who'll call out the bullshit when they see it. Think you can handle that? Yes, sir, Maya said, relief flooding through her. Good. I'm going back to the hospital to sit with my mother. Hold down the fort here. And Maya? He paused at the door. Thank you. For being braver than I was. Then he was gone, leaving Maya standing in the foyer with her heart still racing and her hands still tingling from the slap. Mrs. Kong appeared from wherever she'd been hiding during the confrontation, her expression somewhere between horrified and impressed. Well, Mrs. Kong said, that was certainly something. I'm fired, aren't I? Are you kidding? You just did what everyone in this house has wanted to do for months. You're a legend now. Mrs. Kong grinned. Also, you might want to ice that hand. Looks like it's swelling. Maya looked down at her right hand and realized Mrs. Kong was right. It was red and starting to ache. Totally worth it, she thought. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Staff members who'd been keeping their distance suddenly found excuses to talk to Maya, to pat her on the shoulder, to bring her tea and snacks. The story of the slap spread through the household like wildfire, each retelling adding new dramatic details. That evening, Jo returned with Mrs. Park. The old woman looked frail but alert, her eyes bright when she saw Maya. There's my hero, Mrs. Park said warmly, reaching out to take Maya's hand. Jo told me what you did. I'm sorry if I overstepped. Sorry? Mrs. Park squeezed her hand. Child, you defended my honor. That's not overstepping. That's family. Maya felt tears prick her eyes. Family. When was the last time she'd felt that? Not since leaving Lagos. Not in all her years in Seoul. Always the outsider. Always the help. Now, Mrs. Park said, settling into her favorite chair in the sunroom, I want to hear everything. Don't leave out a single detail. So Maya told her, with Jo listening from the doorway. She described Yuna's cruel words, her own rising anger, the moment when her hand seemed to move of its own accord. Mrs. Park listened with rapt attention, occasionally gasping or squeezing Maya's hand. When Maya finished, Mrs. Park was quiet for a moment. Then she looked up at her son, still standing in the doorway. Jo, she said softly. Come here. He moved to her side, and she reached up to cup his face in her hands, the way she must have when he was a child. I'm proud of you, she said. For letting her go. For choosing what's right. Your father would be proud too. Jo's carefully controlled expression cracked just for a moment. I'm sorry, Mother. For not seeing it sooner. For making you feel unwelcome in your own home. You're here now, Mrs. Park said simply. That's what matters. Maya slipped away quietly, giving them their moment. She found Mrs. Kong in the kitchen preparing dinner and pitched in without being asked. They worked in comfortable silence, and Maya felt something settle in her chest. This job. This house. These people. Maybe she'd found something here worth fighting for. 3 days later, Maya was dusting the library when Joe appeared in the doorway. She'd barely seen him since the incident, though she'd heard he'd been spending more time at home, eating dinner with his mother, even helping her in the garden. "Maya, do you have a moment?" She set down the duster. "Of course, sir." He moved into the room, hands in his pockets, looking almost uncomfortable. "I wanted to thank you again. Properly this time. What you did, standing up for my mother when I wouldn't, that took real courage. Anyone would have done the same." "No," Joe said firmly. "They wouldn't have. Most people see someone like Yuna, someone with money and status and connections, and they back down. You didn't. You saw someone being cruel and you stopped it. That's rare." Maya didn't know what to say to that, so she just nodded. "My mother wants to give you a raise," Joe continued. "I told her I'd already taken care of it. Your salary is being doubled effective immediately." "Sir, that's not necessary." "It is." He smiled slightly. "Besides, my mother's already planning how to spend your afternoons. She wants you to help her restart her garden club. Apparently she used to host it here before my father died, and now she wants to bring it back." The image of Mrs. Park surrounded by friends and flowers made Maya smile. "I'd like that." "Good." Joe moved toward the door, then paused. "Oh, and Maya, if anyone else treats my mother with disrespect, you have my permission to slap them too." He was grinning when he said it, and Maya couldn't help but laugh. "I'll try to use words first this time, sir." "Probably wise. If you're still here, subscribe, because stories like this only work when people stay." 2 weeks later, Maya was helping Mrs. Park arrange flowers in the sunroom when the doorbell rang. Mrs. Kong appeared moments later, her expression uncertain. "Miss Kim is here," she said quietly. "She says she needs to speak with Mrs. Park." The room went silent. Mrs. Park's hands stilled on the flower stems, and Maya felt her own muscles tense. "Should I send her away?" Mrs. Kong asked. Mrs. Park was quiet for a long moment, then shook her head. "No. Let her in." "Are you sure?" Maya asked. "After everything?" "I'm sure." Mrs. Park set down the flowers and straightened her shoulders. "Sometimes people need a chance to apologize. I should give her that chance." Yuna appeared in the doorway moments later, looking very different from the last time Maya had seen her. No designer clothes, no heavy makeup. Just jeans and a simple blouse, her hair pulled back, her face bare and tired. "Mrs. Park," Yuna said quietly. "Thank you for seeing me. Come in, dear. Sit down." Yuna moved into the room but stayed standing, her hands twisting together. "I don't deserve your kindness. I was horrible to you. Cruel and dismissive, Anne, and I'm so sorry." Mrs. Park studied her for a moment. "Why are you here, Yuna?" "Because I need you to know that I regret it. All of it." Yuna's voice cracked. "I was so focused on what I wanted, on securing my place in Joe's life, that I forgot to be a decent human being. You were nothing but kind to me, and I threw it back in your face." "Yes," Mrs. Park agreed calmly. "You did." The blunt acknowledgement seemed to hit Yuna hard. She blinked rapidly, fighting tears. "I know you probably hate me. I know Joe won't take me back. I needed to say it. To tell you that you deserved better. That I was wrong." Mrs. Park was quiet for a long moment. Then she stood, moving slowly to where Yuna stood. "I don't hate you, child. I'm disappointed in you. There's a difference." I don't know which is worse, Yuna whispered. Hate is easier, Mrs. Park said. Disappointment means I still see the potential for you to be better. And I do. I see a young woman who made mistakes but came here to own them. That takes strength. Yuna finally broke, tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Mrs. Park pulled her into a gentle hug, and Maya felt her own throat tighten. This woman, after everything Yuna had done, still had room in her heart for forgiveness. That was grace. Maya wasn't sure she could ever match. It's okay, Mrs. Park murmured. It's okay. When Yuna finally pulled back, wiping at her eyes, she looked at Maya. I owe you an apology too. For the things I said. The way I treated you. You were right about everything. Maya nodded slowly. Apology accepted. I should go, Yuna said, stepping back. Thank you again for seeing me, Mrs. Park. I won't bother you again. Yuna. Mrs. Park's voice stopped her at the door. Take care of yourself. And next time, try to remember that kindness costs nothing. Yuna nodded, unable to speak, and fled. After she left, Mrs. Park sank back into her chair with a heavy sigh. That was hard. You didn't have to forgive her, Maya said quietly. I didn't forgive her, Mrs. Park corrected gently. Not fully. That will take time. But I gave her a chance to apologize. To start making amends. That's all any of us can do. Give people chances and hope they take them. Maya helped Mrs. Park finish the flower arrangements, and they worked in peaceful silence. Through the window, she could see Gio in the garden, actually pulling weeds alongside the gardener. He looked up, caught Maya's eye, and smiled. It was a small moment, insignificant in the grand scheme of things. But Maya felt it settle in her chest like a promise. This house, with its complicated history and its healing wounds, had become something more than just a job. It had become a home. And when Mrs. Park reached over to pat her hand, murmuring, "Thank you, my dear girl," Maya knew she'd made the right choice. Even if that choice involved slapping one of Seoul's most prominent socialites. Some things, she thought, were worth the risk. The afternoon sun slanted through the sunroom windows, painting everything gold. In the kitchen, Mrs. Kong was humming as she prepared dinner. In the garden, Jill was learning to tend the roses his mother loved. And here in the sunroom, Maya and Mrs. Park arranged flowers together. Two women from different worlds who'd found common ground and standing up for what was right. It wasn't a perfect ending. There would be more challenges, more complications. Life in the Park household would never be simple. But it was real, and it was theirs, and that was enough. That evening, over dinner, Mrs. Park announced she'd successfully reformed her garden club. The first meeting would be next week, and she expected everyone, including Jill, to attend. I don't do garden clubs, Mother, Jill protested. You do now, Mrs. Park said firmly. And you're bringing cookies. Maya is teaching me to make Nigerian chin-chin. We'll serve both cultures. Jill looked at Maya, who shrugged innocently. Your mother is very persuasive. I'm learning that, he said dryly. But he was smiling, and when he caught his mother's eye across the table, Maya saw something pass between them. Understanding. Reconciliation. Love that had always been there but got lost for a while. Fine, Joe said. Garden club it is. But I'm not wearing an apron. We'll see about that, Mrs. Park said, and everyone laughed. Later, as Maya cleaned up the kitchen, Mrs. Kong appeared at her elbow. You know, when you first started here, I thought you'd last maybe a week. You had too much fire. Too much opinion. And now? Mrs. Kang smiled. Now I think this house needs more people like you. People who care enough to fight for what's right, even when it's hard. Even when it costs them something. It cost me a very sore hand, Maya joked, flexing her fingers. Worth it, though, wasn't it? Maya thought about Mrs. Park's smile at dinner, about Joe's laughter, about the way the house felt lighter now, as if a dark cloud had finally lifted. Yeah, she said. Definitely worth it. That night, before heading home, Maya stopped by Mrs. Park's room to say goodnight. The old woman was in her favorite chair, looking through a photo album. Maya, come see. Mrs. Park patted the seat beside her. This was Joe when he was little. See how he's smiling? That's the boy I remember. The one I'm starting to see again. Maya looked at the photo of a young Joe, gap-toothed and grinning, holding up a muddy frog with pride. It was hard to reconcile that boy with the cold, controlled man who'd walked through the door 2 weeks ago. You brought him back to me, Mrs. Park said softly. With one brave, foolish slap. You reminded him what matters. You reminded both of us. I just couldn't stand by and watch anymore, Maya admitted. I know. That's what made it brave. Mrs. Park closed the album and took Maya's hand. My grandmother used to say that sometimes the smallest people make the biggest waves. You're my wave, Maya. You came into this house and changed everything. Maya felt tears prick her eyes. Thank you for giving me the chance. Thank you for taking it. Mrs. Park squeezed her hand. Now go home and rest. Tomorrow we start planning the garden club, and I have big ideas. Maya laughed and headed for the door. She paused at the threshold and looked back. Mrs. Park had returned to her photo album, a soft smile on her face. No longer looking sad or lonely or small. She looked like what she was, the matriarch of the house, surrounded by love and respect. As Maya stepped out into the cool evening air, she thought about how quickly life could change. 2 weeks ago, she'd been just another maid in another wealthy household, keeping her head down and her opinions to herself. Now she was family. Part of something bigger than herself. And all it took was one moment of courage. One refusal to look away from injustice. One slap that echoed through a mansion and changed everything. Maya smiled to herself as she walked to the bus stop. Her mother back in Lagos would probably have a heart attack when she told her this story. But she'd also be proud. Because she'd raised Maya to stand up for what was right. To protect those who couldn't protect themselves. To be brave even when it was terrifying. The bus arrived, and Maya climbed aboard, already thinking about tomorrow. About helping Mrs. Park with the garden club. About teaching her to make chin-chin. About whatever new adventure this strange, wonderful family would bring. Behind her, the Park mansion gleamed in the evening light. No longer cold and imposing, but warm and welcoming. A home, finally, for all of them. And if anyone else came along trying to disrespect Mrs. Park? Well, Maya's left hand was still perfectly functional. She grinned at the thought and settled back in her seat for the ride home, her heart full and her conscience clear. Some risks, she'd learned, were absolutely worth taking. We've reached the conclusion of our compelling African-Korean story. If this story moved you, smash that like button so hard it breaks and subscribe for more incredible true stories that prove love can heal the deepest wounds. Share this story with someone if you believe in second chances. But I absolutely cannot make it happen without your support. Your support means everything to me. If you made it all the way to the end, you are an absolute legend. Drop a comment below telling us your favorite moments. I read every single one. Let us know. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.